We are all so busy these days, and we're always looking for helpful tips and advice on how to find a better work-life balance. We all have to earn a living and pay the bills, but are you doing enough to look after yourself and your health at the same time? Now, many of us prioritise careers and work, and we're slaving over our computers and mobiles all the time. But does this make you cut corners on your diet, exercise or sleep? I'm Dr. Ben Sinclair, and welcome to Health versus Wealth with Dr. Ben. Our guests share their life experiences and we discuss their challenges in their health and their wealth. I hope their experiences will help you with your life and health. I'm really looking forward to meeting my guest today, Jim Thorp, who was born in Birmingham and whose business JT Ethos is based in Sutton Coldfield. Now, for 20 years, Jim has worked as a master personal trainer. He's been helping 35 to 60-year-olds to address their various medical issues and to help them make lifestyle changes. Now, Jim had a distinguished start in life with 9 years in the RAF and also as a professional rugby player. So, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to have you on. And I hear you started on the rugby field quite early in life.
Yeah, I think the first recollection I have was a sort of very cold, wet Sunday morning, and I think it was about the age 4 and a half, or something like that. So it was sort of started very early and sort of carried on ever since.
Fantastic. And I gather your childhood hero was a rugby star as well?
Yes, Rory Underwood was my childhood hero, which will age me to a certain degree. Again, growing up, all I ever wanted to do was fly planes and play rugby for England.
He was a real poster boy, wasn't he? Because I remember him pictured with this RAF jet, and he was all this a fighter kit, and then he was on the field, and it was quite a dramatic juxtaposition. And he had a brother, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, Tony. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And obviously we're of an age, but they sort of were the pinnacle of the England squad when we were in school, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Rory was as you said, the poster boy, and again, having been on the inside from an Air Force point of view, the Air Force used him very well, and I think it worked well for both of them. I sort of, having got to know Rory ever since, I think he knew the deal, and he got a good side of it as well, but the Air Force did as well. So it worked well. Now
the forces did come calling for you early in your career, and I believe the RAF took an interest in you in school.
Yes, we had a combined cadet force at school, and I sort of started again because of my sort of desire to sort of fly planes. Joined up with the RAF section of that, and actually we also had careers officers that would come into schools. I don't think that happens anymore. I don't know. The careers side of things seems to be a lot more sort of or less obvious than it was. But yeah, they came in and we'd meet with them once or twice a year. They came in from all three services, Air Force, Navy and the Army, and I ended up applying for a sixth form scholarship with the Air Force. Was lucky enough to get that, and then I started again initially as a navigator. So again, they very quickly ruled me out of actually flying the planes. Not quite sure why that was, but they did. So sixth form scholarship with them. The Navy also, took a bit of an interest. So I distinctly remember one very blustery, windy, and gale force week spent on a ship off the east coast of the UK. But then ultimately it was always going to be the Air Force for me. So went from there. They also sponsored me through university. And like I said, that was all I really wanted to do.
And I mean, obviously, your other big passion is rugby. You've done thousands of scrums.
Yep.
You're a prop, and I can see from the shoulders. If you're not watching, you can reliably tell you that Jim would probably prop up a bridge quite amply. I think
that's a compliment.
With all the muscles and the shoulders. So, what happened with the rugby and alongside the RAF? Was that a parallel career?
Yes, it was. Yes. So the sort of if you like, the interesting side of things is that rugby turned professional, I think, 97, and I had literally 6 weeks earlier, I'd sort of signed up full term for the Air Force. So again, I sort of very quickly was moved away from air crew and ended up in something called the RAF Regiment. But I'd sort of signed up, I think you signed up to a 38, something like that, if memory serves me right. And then 6 weeks later, rugby turned professional. Now, the sort of the punchline, if you like, to the story of all I wanted to do was fly planes and play rugby for England is I did neither. However, I came relatively close to doing both. But at that point, again, I wasn't a good enough rugby player at that point to have thought it was going to be, a career. Equally, at that point, there was not enough money involved in it, so it was never really a career option. But equally, I took away my ability to explore that to a degree because I'd already signed up with the Air Force. Having said that, the Air Force at that point was still a pretty good place to be for sport, and I actually think elite sport, certainly elite rugby now, is better than it was at my time. I think from my time it went down a little bit, probably down quite a decent amount for elite sportsmen and women, but now they seem to have got a program in place where it's going back up. But so I was able to juggle the two. I was able to juggle it with my postings so that I could be where I needed to be. I did okay, but actually at the point where I became good enough and the teams I was playing with, we got into the Premiership, we all went full-time, and at that point I was released full-time to go and play rugby. So again, I was very much in Rory's footsteps at that point because I was seconded onto the careers offices. I'd do visits to schools and all the way around and sort of trolleyed out to try and sort of show people how good life could be. What it does mean is that my service career is nothing to write home about whatsoever, and it's when I sort of mix with other people who've sort of served and done tours here, there and everywhere, I sort of keep quiet and don't say a huge amount.
No, and I suppose it's very interesting that sort of 6 months later, just after you'd joined the RAF, rugby went professional.
Yeah.
Did you feel a conflict at that point, or were you happy with the decision you'd made?
No, I think it comes from familial sort of culture, doesn't it? In terms of, my mother was never happier with than a job for life, and sort of signed up on that. So, and it was all I'd ever wanted to do. Again, if I look back now, what would, with the benefit of hindsight, would I have changed? Would I advise myself then to do something different? Yes, I probably would. And I do remember a conversation with my parents after sixth form saying, "Oh, I'm not sure the forces is for me," but decided to push ahead anyway. And actually, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in. So I can't look back on it with anything other than it was the right place to be at the right time. Equally, I've always felt with the forces, and I did when I was in. When you want to be there, it's the best place in the world. The minute you don't, it's the worst place. There's no middle ground. It's either brilliant or it's something not a place for you. So once it was my time to move on, it was time to move on, and I didn't hang around. So
it's clear demarcation. Now I know you've done. You said to me earlier about 1,000 at least scrums. Are you carrying some injuries at the moment from your rugby days?
All sorts. Yeah. I had a spinal fusion in my neck probably before my career took off, really. I think it was about 98. So that happened, and then I ended up with 4 shoulder reconstructions.
Four shoulder reconstructions?
Yes. Yeah. 3 on the left, 1 on the right.
Wow. Are they still attached?
Yes, the arms still work all right. Interestingly, and it sounds like an old man's story, and maybe it is, but when it gets cold in the winter, you can feel them. Yeah. But it's fine. And the reality of it is my career choice post-rugby, post-Air Force has actually been as much about me putting myself back together as it has, whatever I've done for my clients. And, that ability to learn on myself has been great. So, it's had sort of, a couple of benefits from that. But yeah, loads of injuries, like I say, broken bones, torn ligaments, muscles, all sorts. So
it's interesting, the lessons that you learn personally, I think, often become the sort of the defining moment of your career sometimes.
Yeah.
And it sounds very much like you learned those lessons through going through the motions of those injuries, trying to get better from them. Are there any nuggets of wisdom that you can impart, having been through some significant injuries?
I think probably the biggest one on that is that the body will heal itself. The body is amazing at healing itself if you give it the right conditions to do so. And that's the second part where I think, if we're talking wider about health, that's where we're limiting ourselves on that.
It's a big if, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really big if. And I mean, for me, one of the biggest learnings, I am an experiential learner. I learn by doing, and I learn by sort of from that. But one of the things that I learned very early on was regarding diet. And I was in a gym wearing the personal trainer top, and I just finished playing rugby, so I was a big guy, and I was never lean. So, and I was relatively self-conscious. You're up against these kids that were 10, 12 years younger than me, chiseled, looking at, just looked amazing.
It's all about looks, isn't it? Yeah.
It is all about looks. I felt very self-conscious on that, and I was advising people on diet and all the rest of it, and I was trying to live it myself. I absolutely try and live out pretty much everything I preach, and I wasn't losing any weight. And I said to the guy who's been a mentor to me along the way, I was like, look, I need to do better at this. I don't feel I'm credible advising people on stuff when it's not working on me. And so he referred me to a pal of his, a wonderful woman, again, who's really hot on sort of, this was 15 years ago, way before digestive health. Microbiome was even a word people knew in the medical community, let alone the general population. And so it was sort of really an opportunity to sort of go to her and say, right, what's going on? What do I need to know? What don't I know at the moment that sort of helps me, helps me with that.
What weight were you at that point?
I think I topped out about 19 stone.
Yeah.
Now that was when I was playing, but I wasn't a million miles away from that when I started this work. So it was fairly early on.
Yeah.
And she sort of identified I've got a dysbiosis going on, I'd got some leaky gut going on, I'd got some food sensitivities, intolerances, and took me through about 18 months of pretty full on, pretty hardcore gut overhaul work and other bits and pieces like that. And I think my weight dropped to the lowest about 14 stone 5, something like that. And I got a picture of me with my kids, and I literally look like a pineapple head on a sort of twiglet. It just looks ridiculous. So for me, it was too low,
too much.
But the learning from that was phenomenal. And so that, you asked a question about the nuggets. It's that ability to go into something in that level of depth, see what it does. And then for me in my professional life now, it's about going, well, that level of commitment is not what most people will do, even if they need to do it. So what can we take from that that's going to help them just a little bit? And sort of work through that. And I've done that with my diet, with my nutrition, my gut health. I've done it with my physical health. I've done it with my spiritual health. So that's been part of the joy of the last 20 years in a lot of ways.
Fantastic. I love the way that you're talking holistically in all the areas of the social, spiritual, physical, mental. And at Dr. Finley's, we really value that kind of integration of all those different aspects. You're the first person who sat there and talked about spiritual health, which is a really welcome part to the show, because actually our spiritual health really defines, by our values, where we resonate, our internal beliefs, and therefore what's going to happen. And if you haven't got that bit, you're not even aware of that bit, the rest of the stuff isn't going to fall into place either.
No. When you're helping people change, when you're trying to get people healthy, they've got to change behaviours. And if they don't know why they're going to do that, if they don't know what they're getting, pain is the obvious reason people change. They'll do anything when they're in pain. But the minute they're out of pain, that motivation disappears. So you're absolutely right. I will sit down and I will ask every single one of my clients, what are your values? What are your values in terms of your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health? And the spiritual one's really interesting because most of them say, I'm not religious.
Exactly.
Like, no. We're not talking spirituality. We're not talking religion, and that opens the door to a really nice conversation. A conversation most people have never even thought of having, let alone having, and relating that back to, do I eat a chocolate bar or not? And how does
it's amazing how that can actually connect, isn't it?
100%. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think in that context, values-wise, you went into professional rugby. You've mentioned that you hope to be a sort of a Rory Underwood England player. When the game turned professional, did that have the hope of higher earnings for you? Was the money important?
No, the money wasn't important. I look at what the money the academy graduates are earning now is just mind-boggling. I probably didn't earn in 5 years what they're earning in a year. But it wasn't about that. It was about seeing how good I could be, and it was about the thrill of getting better and getting better and getting better, and winning was a sort of major thing. Obviously, winning on a Saturday, in the game, but also winning in terms of, I'm in this squad, I'm against this person. This person's got England caps, I haven't. Well, and I'm starting ahead of him, or I'm doing this, or I'm playing against so and so, and they're at World Cup. I played against all the people that won the World Cup, and so if you can stand toe to toe with them, or at least feel you're there or thereabouts, that's just the best feeling in the world. The thing that was really difficult to live with is professional sport is brutal, and almost nobody ends on their terms. And the point at which it ended for me was in a brutal way. I won't go into it now, but it was one of the most brutal ways. One day you've got a job, the next minute you haven't, quite literally. And that 10-year spell of getting there, getting better, goes in a heartbeat, and you're then left wondering what if. And that's the bit that was difficult to get rid of. I don't know how good I could have been, but I had a good time at the same time.
Welcome back to Health versus Wealth with Dr. Ben. I'm here with ex-professional rugby player and master PT, Jim Thorp. Jim, after you left the RAF, you set up JT Ethos in about 2003?
Yes.
Why did you choose that name?
Because it was the business name changed. Actually, I started off Jim Thorp Training, just in my own name. At the point I was taking people on and had people working for me, obviously that name has a sort of a certain limitation to what we was doing, and it was really about, right, what do I want from the organisation I want to build? What do I want from the people that are representing me and working with the clients that we're bringing in? And it was very much about that ethos of natural health, of holistic health, of sort of using lots of different areas to help people get better. The model of health, and if you like, the core foundation of what we do, is about helping people create balance. And we've actually taken it from one of your forebearers in terms of Hippocrates, as you will know, the godfather of modern medicine. And for all his renowned, as I understand it, he only had about 30 herbs and spices at his disposal. But what he did was he coached his patients to find balance between their three doctors. They had Dr. Quiet, Dr. Diet, and Dr. Happiness. We've now added in Dr. Movement because, as we are doing now, we spend too much time sat down. And so that's the core ethos of everything I've done and do. And that's what the ethos of the organisation was going to be, in terms of saying, well, look, it's about finding balance. Not everybody wants to jump around and exercise and get hot and sweaty and all the rest of it. Not everybody wants to, live like a monk and eat mung beans for the rest of their life. So there's got to be a ground at which we can help everybody find their balance, their centre. And my fundamental belief is, if people have enough balance in their life, the vast majority of symptoms and things like that will improve. They might not go away completely, but good health, real vitality in life comes from good balance across all those four areas.
I love that, and I really agree with that ethos of just the balance and that preventative good health and that maintenance good health,
yeah.
Aside from disease and injury, which you can't predict sometimes, but actually maintaining us. So who are your clients, and how do you support them on a granular level?
So again, I talk to people with bad backs, bad necks, diabetes, IBS, but also those people who find that they don't feel like themselves. Everything hurts a bit, or walking upstairs is a bit difficult, or they feel like there's a healthier, more vibrant person inside them. And my programs are all about health coaching. It's about empowering people to understand their own health and understanding what actions they can take to make themselves that little bit healthier. Again, at the core of my being, I fundamentally believe every single person has the ability to live a life full of health and happiness and vitality. It is just how much you're prepared to do to contribute to that. And there's no right or wrong answer to that. But, if you're not prepared to get to bed on time, if you're not prepared to drink more water than you do caffeine, or eat, healthier, vibrant, colourful foods, you've got to accept that there's going to be a cost to your own vitality in that. And you can't have both. But hopefully with the coaching, and when you're working with clients, you can help them find the bits that they will do, and then the bits that they can learn to do, and sort of help them along that path and that journey. And I do that in two ways. The core of my business is one-to-one work, but then we also do sort of some corporate programs, but it's all based around health education, giving people the tools, the power to understand what they need to do.
I love the whole sort of balance between how much you're going to do, and you related to it earlier. You didn't really want to be a bodybuilder, so getting down to 14 stone was too much to maintain.
Yeah.
But balancing that out, you pulled back a bit, took the principles of that, and found a better balance for yourself. So moving on to you then, you know all this stuff. How do you score your own health? How do you apply this stuff in yourself? What would you score yourself out of 10 for a global health score right now?
It's interesting. I would say I'm probably about a 7 at the moment. And one of the reasons for that is, I know what 10 out of 10 can look like. And quite honestly, I'm not motivated to get myself there.
Very good point.
So I'm not motivated to eat really, really well. I'm not, I am working out really well at the moment. And I'm sort of, that I'm enjoying that. But also for me personally, I'm kind of in a phase of putting my body back together again. I've managed some hip conditions, which are going to need some form of surgery at some point. My back and neck need maintenance, because of, as one of the sort of surgeons I saw said, well, you've got to respect your previous life choices. That's going to leave you with a legacy of something. And so for me, I'd say about a 6. I'm really good on my sleep schedule. I'm really good on my sort of sleep hygiene. My diet is probably the area I sort of find consistency the most challenging.
Tell me more about that, because you've mentioned you know what to do.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge, isn't it? None of us is perfect.
Yeah.
We might know all the academic stuff or all the practical stuff. You're a trainer, you're a coach.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to coach yourself, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And I'm a stress eater. I know that, and so when, and I'm running a business and I'm trying to evolve, I'm actually running a couple of businesses, so, and I'm trying to move my life forward. I've got kids have just gone through GCSEs and A-levels, so like everybody, I've got the stresses, and for me, it's stress eating. But you're absolutely right. It is now almost impossible to coach yourself, and it may well be I need to check in and book in with somebody and sort of have a bit of sort of coaching of my own to get myself back. I was really good in lockdown. Was brilliant. I came out of lockdown looking and feeling amazing. Why was that? I don't know. In some respects, business stress was ridiculous because of the impact on business. But actually, I was in one place, so it was relatively easy to do. Yeah, I was consistent. Yeah,
interesting. I think at Dr. Finley's we have a psychologist, we have a nutritionist, we have doctors who are coaches, and we have sort of psychiatry and breath coach and physio and everything as well. And I think you've alluded to an important point there. We need different things at different times. My coach has often said to me that just to reset and to think, where am I? What is it that I'm actually struggling with? And why? Why is it that I'm struggling with stress eating when I know what I could do? It may be that there's a psychological thing there that actually a couple of episodes of psychological therapy might fix that sort of internal knee-jerk reaction of stress eat, hand jerks out and reaches the nearest thing to eat when you get stressed because your kids are going through GCSEs or business is booming or business is challenged. And there's some great stats about, having stuff in vision, isn't there? Just if you have stuff in arm's reach and you see it, you're far more likely to eat or drink it.
Yes.
So if you don't want to, don't have it in front of you.
Yeah.
But that's easier said than done when you've got kids in the house. My challenge is, I do a high-fat, low-carb diet, but people buy my kids sweets. And sometimes I want to buy my kids sweets because it's a Friday treat, whatever. But if there's sweets in the house, I really struggle to resist them. And so for me, if I have a sugar crash or a stress-related bit of the day, I have to try and resist eating the kids' Haribos. Yeah. And there's a reason why, because I'll disappoint them.
Yes.
Because they'll come home from school and go, Dad, you eat all the Haribos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, and I feel bad. Yeah. So maybe thinking about the why behind the stress eating might take you to another level. And I'd certainly recommend for anyone who's struggling with a thorny issue, they haven't quite worked out what it is. A couple of episodes of online psychological therapy can often identify a trigger. For me, I know what it was. I was bullied at school and I basically resorted to comfort eating. Right. I used to jump the wall of school, run down this little tuck shop where no one was, and I'd just spend all my pocket money on sweets because it made me feel better, and it was my secret special little thing that I did to make myself feel better. The problem is I'm still that child when I get stressed.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So what do I do to untangle that?
I think mine relating to food is probably I relate food to love. In that, if you ask me about food, the image that constantly comes into my mind is my grandmother, who was a great cook, great baker. And I'd walk home after school, and we're talking secondary school, 13, 14, 15, and she'd be sat at the kitchen table looking out the window. As I'd walk up, she'd get up and she'd do me a casserole-sized dish of macaroni cheese. Oh. I mean, this thing, it was just a feeder. Oh, absolute feeder. And literally the toast would just keep coming. My granddad's job was just to bring me the toast. And that to me is food. Food is love. And so, inevitably there's something in there about, under pressure, you're probably not feeling as loved as you might want to, or whatever else it is. And it's you're absolutely right. And again, in terms of it, it's just that, what do you reach for? Where do you go for? With, if we look at the impact on diet around the nation or society, convenience is a major problem, and I work 100 metres from a co-op local. So, and unfortunately you go in there and you're not going to make the good choices.
And they stack it all at the entrance, just to tempt you, don't they?
Absolutely.
Now, a final thought. I know we've both gone through skin cancer.
Yep.
Interesting enough, when I was 35, I had a malignant melanoma.
Right.
And I relate that to actually the stress of being made redundant.
Okay.
It came up very quickly afterwards. What was your story on the skin cancer side?
So I think I had a basal cell carcinoma on my head, and it was just something. I sort of thought I got a bit of a scab or something like that, and it just stayed there, and it grew, and I took far too long to recognise it. I didn't know what it was, and it didn't even sort of cross my mind.
And you don't look at the top of your head often.
Well,
You're a tall guy.
Absolutely.
Who's going to look at the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, it was when I spoke to my barber about it, I did try and say, you guys could really help in this. You're seeing people's heads from angles they're not.
And back of the ears as well is a big place to have these things, isn't
it? But I mean, fortunately, it was operated on, an amazing sort of bit of surgery where they left me with a really they did a rotational shift, so they cut it out and then rotated the skin on the scalp to close it up, so I wasn't left with a skin graft, because with a skin graft the hair wouldn't have grown, so I had a bald patch on my head. So amazing little bit of surgery on that front, and I fortunately got the all clear, although again the prescription for that was make sure you wear a hat, which again, talk about behaviour change, is really difficult for me. I'm in my second year, I think, of that now, and I'm just about getting more comfortable with it. I still don't like it because I get really hot and sweaty with anything on my head. So to wear a hat was a real challenge for the first year, but I'm getting there. And it's just that silly basic behaviour change.
If you'd been a cricketer, probably would have been a lot easier.
Exactly, yes, So, and again, it's interesting, one of my things to do is to get back to see the GP. I've got some other other sort of little bits of things on my head. I'm like, I need to make sure that's nothing,
It's worth getting checked, absolutely. And the final thought on that is that it's not just about sun exposure. A lot of these things are from immune suppression, and the post-COVID era, a lot of us have had immune suppression from COVID. We've lost key bacteria, and it brings us back nicely to an anti-inflammatory diet. If you eat a low inflammation diet, i.e. lots of fresh fruit and veg, colourful veg, low processed sugar, you're far less likely to kick off obesity, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's and arthritis. Yeah. So I think the message you're talking about is we've all still got to work on our nutrition to prevent these things.
You got it, like I say, I think anti-inflammatory is the right way, isn't it? And one of the points I was thinking about sort of coming here is you're absolutely right. Inflammation from diet is significant, and it's affecting us all. But in terms of managing my hip conditions, and again, it was like, well, okay, it's inflammation. So what do I need to do? Diet, absolutely. That's a sort of thing. But then that actually led me into cold water therapy.
Yes, I was just about to say, are you doing cold water?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the single biggest impact I've had in managing the pain levels in my hip. And so it's that global holistic way of going, right, okay, I've got inflammation is a key issue, and I think it is for pretty much everybody, but I've got a reason to be on top of my inflammation now, which is exactly what my clients have when they come and work with me. So what else can I do about it? And you're absolutely right. For dietarily, that's important. Cold water has been really good. The right sorts of movements. So again, with my sort of weights work, with my squatting, I'm going to a certain level, but I know if I go any deeper, so again, I might look in a gym and people are like, you're not doing it properly. I'm like, I'm doing it okay for my hips.
But it's balance. Just balancing that inflammation. And Jim, we could talk in depth about inflammation, but we've run out of time. I'm so sorry. We're getting on our inflammation high horse, but it's so interesting talking to you. I want to thank you for coming in today.
A pleasure. Thank you.
So that's it for today. I hope my guest and I have helped you meet some of your health versus wealth challenges. Now, to hear more from me, Dr. Ben, why not subscribe on your usual podcast platform? And if you like my advice or you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me on podcast@drfinlays.co.uk. Anyway, I hope to see you again, but for now, it's goodbye from me, Dr. Ben.